EarFilms came together as a company 3 or 4 years ago. It was the meeting of myself with Daniel Marcus Clark, who's a fantastic storyteller, musician, writer, and Danny Evans, who runs an organisation called One Taste, which was a very successful music and spoken word night in London. So we all came together with different skill sets, and Daniel had been working on this kind of concept for EarFilms for a few years and was telling us about it, and me and Danny both just got really excited about it as a concept, and kind of bringing our individual skills to that and where we could take it, and I think just getting excited about doing something that we didn't even know was possible.
What you're about to experience is a film for your ears and your imagination. We've given you blindfolds to help focus your senses. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the writer and director of To Sleep to Dream, and your narrator for this experience, Mr. Daniel Marcus Clark.
I was working as a sound designer and composer for various different companies, working with companies like Cartoon de Salvo, Polar Bear, Company Doro, based over in Tokyo. And every time it seemed in my process, sound was something that was added afterwards. And so there was this sort of question for me of what would a story look like if sound became the primary storyteller?
Now I'll be here throughout as your narrator and your guide. So if you're ready, I'd like to invite you to drop your day. Place on your blindfolds, and we'll begin.
So the piece To Sleep to Dream explores a society where dreaming is outlawed and illegal, and follows one central character as he begins to rediscover the act of dreaming.
Because it's dealing with dreams, there's a huge kind of openness for like what we were able to do with the sound design and the storytelling. So it's like very immersive for the audience because we're taking them into these kind of quite surreal places and then kind of back into this very kind of rigid environment that the kind of story is rooted in.
The great floods began to come, devastating the entire world and drowning the earth beneath water.
We had to make and remake the show various times because we'd make it and then we'd put it in front of an audience and we'd explore what it was and how it worked, and it just seemed each time there was more that could be pulled out. So the language was constantly being refined, and so, you know, I narrate the piece live, but we've pulled back my narration from being, say, 60 pages down to being 5 pages. It's just so that there's more space for people's own experiences in it.
Ahead of you, huge mountains hang in the horizon. You look down at your hands. You're not dreaming.
As we've been touring the show around, one of the first things that we noticed was that the audience's relationship was very different from other work that we presented previously in other companies. It was because of the nature, because the audience were blindfolded, because it was, you know, they're in the middle, they're the star really, you know, all the speakers are faced towards them, they've got 23 speakers pointed at them. It meant that it was a very internal experience for people, and afterwards all the conversations we had were much more about people's own imaginations and how their brains worked and what they discovered about themselves, more than it was about their relationship with, for instance, me as a performer.
You may remove your blindfolds and allow yourselves to adjust back to the room.
I think people become very surprised about like the power of their own imagination, and in discussion afterwards they start to realise things that they didn't even realise was happening, and people will say, oh, I didn't see anything at all, but then you ask them afterwards and they can exactly describe to you the apartment of where this guy lives or this particular scene, and they've been visualising everything, you know, in very different ways. So people seem to learn something about themselves as well as it being a kind of an experience that they're receiving.